Welcome to meeting number 119 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Veteran Affairs. Conformément à l'article 85.1 du règlement et de la motion adoptée par le comité,
pursuant to Standing Order 815 of the motion adopted by the Committee of Thursday, November 28, 24, the committee commenced its study on Supplementary Estimates B 2024-2025. Today's meeting is being held in hybrid format in accordance with the standing orders. I would like to remind you all that members' comments are to be addressed to the chair. And as usual, I wish a warm welcome to all veterans who are in this room and who are online listening to us. I would also like to inform the members of the committee that last week we had the great pleasure of greeting the Ukrainian delegation. It was a wonderful meeting, and on behalf of the committee, I accepted to receive this plaque that you can always come and look at after. Before beginning this...
That's to be evaluated first. Well, and avant de commencer...
So before beginning, for the purposes of this meeting, we must proceed, first of all, to the adoption of the supplementary budget. So I think it is incumbent upon us to do this before proceeding with this session. So you have received a copy of the request for the project budget for an amount of $1,250. Do we have any objections? No objections. So the motion is carried.
On division.
Right. Okay, Mr. Richards. And voilà. Donc,
and so there we have it. Now, for the first hour, we have with us the Honourable Ginette Petitpas-Taylor, MP and Minister for Veterans Affairs. She is accompanied by members of the Department of Veterans Affairs, Mr. Stephen Harris, Senior Assistant Deputy Minister, Service Delivery Sector, Mr. Mitch Freeman, Acting Assistant Deputy Minister, Strategic Policy, Planning and Performance Branch, and online we have Mr. Jonathan Adams, Chief Financial Officer. I know that when we have the Minister here present with us, as well as representatives of the department, then the members always have a lot of questions to ask. So I will ask you to be clear and concise as for the witnesses, and I hope that your questions will also be clear and concise, and it will make everybody's life easier, and it will maintain decorum. So I therefore invite the Minister to give her opening speech. The floor is yours. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Members of the committee for the invitation to appear before the committee to discuss Supplementary Estimates B for Veterans Affairs Canada. This process is an essential part of our ongoing commitment to transparency, accountability, and to ensuring that the needs of veterans and their families remain at the forefront of our priorities. Canada's veterans have dedicated their lives to protecting our values, our freedom, and our way of life. It is our duty to support them in return with concrete actions and resources that reflect our gratitude for their sacrifices. The investments we are making through the Supplementary Estimates B are critical to delivering care, benefits, services, and recognition that veterans and their families deserve after service to Canada. Comme vous le savez, Plus de 90% du budget d'Anciens
As you
Combattants
know,
Canada
over
représente
90%
des
of
paiements
Veterans
versés
Affairs
aux
Canada's
vétérans
budget
et
represents
vétéranes
payments
pour des
to
mesures de
veterans
soutien
for
et des
hard-won
services
support
gérants
and
acquis
services
pour ceux et
to
celles
those who
qui ont
served
servi
in the
dans les
Canadian
forces
Armed
armées
Forces
canadiennes
and
et
to
par
the
les membres de
family
leurs
members
familles qui les ont
who
soutenus à
supported
la
them
maison.
at home.
L'augmentation de 954
The
millions de dollars prévue dans le budget des dépenses
million
inclut
increase to the estimate
942
includes
millions de dollars pour des programmes et des
942
services
million
qui
for
garantissent
programs and
l'accès aux
services that
avantages
guarantee
que
access to benefits
pour
for
chaque
every
vétéran
eligible
éligible, peu
veteran,
importe le nombre
regardless
de
of
demandes.
the number of
Ce
applications.
financement témoigne de
This
l'engagement
funding
de notre
demonstrates
gouvernement
the
à
government's
offrir le soutien
commitment to
nécessaire, que
providing
ce
the
soit pour la
necessary
santé
support,
mentale,
whether it be
la
for mental health,
réadaptation, l'aide
rehabilitation,
financière ou
financial
d'autres
assistance,
services
or other
essentiels
essential services
susceptibles
that can
d'améliorer la
improve
qualité
the
de vie de
quality
nos
of
vétérans
life
et vétéranes.
in our veterans.
Such investments, Mr. Speaker, demonstrate this government's dedication to honoring the sacrifices made by veterans and ensuring that their needs are met. You will see, Mr. Chair, that in estimates also includes $4 million in funding to commemorate significant Canadian military milestones, including the 80th anniversary of D-Day and the beginning of the Battle of Normandy. One of the most profound responsibilities is to always remember the sacrifices that millions of Canadians made during the World Wars to defend global peace and freedom. Our domestic and international events last June paid solemn tribute to the veterans of these conflicts and to the hundreds of thousands of our fallen who gave their lives while serving our country. At the same time, we must recognize the efforts that the growing number of modern-day veterans have made to safeguard peace and security in the world. Whether that's through programs that meet their needs or commemorative events that honor their service, we're taking more steps to be there for veterans. Last month, we supported a delegation of Canadian veterans and their families to revisit Cyprus to mark the 60th anniversary of Canadian peacekeeping there. It was a journey that held deep personal significance for those who served in Operation Snow Goose. They were able to connect with fellow veterans who served there over the years and share their stories of their service with them. Anciens Combattants Canada utilisera 2,75 millions
Veterans
de
Affairs
dollars
Canada
du
will
budget des
use
dépenses pour poursuivre sa
$2.75
campagne de
million
commémoration
of the
afin que
estimates
les
to
Canadiens
continue
et
its
Canadiennes
remembrance
rendent
campaigns
hommage
so that
à ceux et
Canadians
celles
can
qui ont
pay
servi.
tribute to those
Et
who
cette
have
campagne
served,
de
and in
service
its service
pour informer
campaigns
les vétérans
to inform
du soutien
veterans of the
disponible.
support that is
Le
available.
budget des dépenses prévoit aussi un
The
montant
estimates also
supplémentaire de
include
2
an
millions de
additional
dollars
$2
pour le
million
Fonds de
for the
bien-être des
veterans
vétérans
and the
et de
families'
leurs familles,
well-being fund,
qui s'ajoute au budget
on top
actuel du
of
fonds,
the
qui
fund's
s'élève à
current
3
budget,
millions de
which
dollars.
is $3 million.
This funding assists organizations and initiatives that support veterans' health and employment, as well as women, Indigenous, and 2S LGBTQI+ veterans. Allocating funds towards programs and services that address the needs of equity-deserving veterans allows us to promote equality, dignity, and empowerment. It allows us to recognize their diverse experiences and challenges in preserving these chapters in Canada's military history. Je tiens d'ailleurs à remercier les membres du comité pour le travail
I
qu'ils
would like to thank the
accomplissent
members of
afin
the committee
d'étudier
for the
les
work they are
expériences des
doing to
vétérans noirs
study the
et autochtones.
experiences of Black
J'attends
and
avec
Aboriginal
impatience vos
veterans. I
conclusions
look
et avec
forward
grand
to
intérêt.
your findings.
Au total, le budget
In
supplémentaire
total,
des dépenses
the
B
supplementary
ajoute
estimates B
954
adds
millions de dollars du budget d'Anciens
$954
Combattants
million
Canada.
to
Ce
Veterans
financement
Affairs
additionnel
Canada budget.
représente un
This additional
investissement
funding
nécessaire dans la
represents a
santé et le
necessary
bien-être des
investment
vétérans
in the
et
health
vétéranes,
and
ainsi que leurs
well-being
familles.
of veterans
Maintenant, ça
and
me
their
fera
families.
plaisir à répondre
I
aux
would now be
questions
very
des
pleased
membres du
to answer
comité.
any
Merci
questions
beaucoup,
you may
Monsieur
have
le Président.
about these investments.
Merci,
Thank you very
Madame
much,
la
Mr. Chair.
Ministre.
Thank you very much,
Now
Madam
I'd
Minister.
like to invite the Vice Chair of the committee. He's by video conference. Mr. Richard, you have 6 minutes for questioning the Minister. Please go ahead.
Minister, you're now the Minister of Employment, the Minister of Workforce Development, the Minister of Official Languages, the Minister of Veterans Affairs, and the Associate Minister of National Defense. Can you tell us which of these files will be your priority?
Thank you so much, Mr. Richards. And I have to say congratulations, as I hear that you're a new father. So congratulations on that. Yeah.
Thank you.
So thank you so much, Mr. Richards, for that question. A few weeks ago, the Prime Minister put his trust in me and asked me to take on these additional responsibilities for a short-term period, and I'm pleased to do so. I have to say that I'm hardworking and I'm not scared of hard work, and I will continue to meet all of my commitments as Minister of Veterans Affairs and also assume the additional responsibilities that have been asked of me to do.
Well, I think veterans are just a little bit concerned, right? They have already seen struggles with your department in terms of getting the quality and timeliness of services that they think that they deserve and that they do deserve. And now they see you as a part-time Minister of Veterans Affairs. And there's no other way we can put that. You have several files. You cannot be full-time on any one file. So you're a part-time Minister of Veterans Affairs. So how do you think it makes veterans feel to know that they have a part-time minister?
Well, I certainly disagree with the premise of your question, Mr. Richards. I think that people who know me know that I'm hardworking and I'm not scared of working long hours, and I will continue to do and meet all of my responsibilities and requirements as Minister of Veterans Affairs. To be frank, the day that I was sworn in that same evening, I was at Pepper Pod as I had committed to doing an event there, and all of my events that I have committed to have been fulfilled, and they will be continued to be fulfilled. So for veterans that are listening out there, I am a full-time minister. I'm committed to serving them, and I will be continuing to do so.
Well, are you telling us that you believe the Ministry of Employment, the Ministry of Workforce Development, the Ministry of Official Languages aren't also full-time jobs? I mean, how many full-time jobs can one have? I mean, you simply cannot devote full-time attention to any one of these files unless you're not going to do any of them justice. So, Minister, I struggled to understand how you can say that you're anything other than a part-time minister at this point. I guess what I'd like to ask you is whether the Prime Minister consulted with you on this decision before giving you a second and third role within Cabinet.
Well, I certainly don't know how it works in your party, Mr. Richards, but our Prime Minister consults with his caucus and his cabinet all the time. And when he approached me to take on these responsibilities because he felt that I had the skill sets and was able to do it, and he has the trust in me. Okay. And again, this is a short time appointment for a period of time, and I have taken on the responsibilities, and all departments are very important. And again, the veterans who know me well, know that I will continue to serve them full-time and will be making sure that all of my engagements are met.
So what you're telling us then is that both yourself and the Prime Minister felt that veterans weren't important enough to warrant more than a part-time minister. Is that what we're hearing here? Don't you think veterans deserve more than a part-time minister?
I think you're putting words in my mouth with Mr. Richards. And for veterans who know me and know me well, know that I'm a hardworking Minister of Veterans Affairs, and I am absolutely committed to making sure that the job is done.
Well, we'll be watching because I think there are a lot of veterans out there who are concerned, and I don't doubt your intentions, and I don't doubt your willingness to work hard. But one cannot have as many files as you have and give them all full-time attention. So I certainly hope that veterans will see that they do get some better attention than they deserve under a part-time minister. Let me turn instead now to this issue that I wanted to raise with you about 82-year-old veteran Jim DeMars. He's the president of the Penticton Legion. He was violently attacked by a number of thugs on his way home from the Legion one night. And he expressed, because of the lack of proper criminal justice system under your government, the lack of proper punishment for criminals, that he was even reluctant to report the crime because he felt like the offenders would just get off scot-free. So I want to ask you, knowing that, the veterans that you were there to represent, one of them was violently attacked as a result of the weak criminal justice policies of your government. Would you now, after knowing that, finally support the common sense proposal of Pierre Poilievre to ensure jail and not bail for repeat violent offenders?
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Excuse me, Mr. Richards, I have a point of order, so I stop the time. Yes, Mr. May.
We've asked the minister to appear today on estimates. I've yet to hear a single question from the member opposite that's even remotely relevant to what we're talking about today.
Yes.
On that point, Mr. Chair, if I can just add to that point.
Richard.
I mean, first of all, the questions around the minister's part-time nature in her role are relevant to all of the expenses, of course, within the department. So I believe these questions are relevant, and I frankly think it's really unfortunate that a Liberal member would try to, step in to try to cover for the minister. Let her answer the question.
Thank you, Mr. Richards. So, but the second part, you are talking about justice and things like that. But as you know, that we are discussing about the budget supplement B. So try to focus on that, please. Thank you.
Well, Minister, the question is relevant to veterans, and it's relevant to the department because this is a veteran who the department is supposed to represent who was violently attacked. So I'm asking the minister a relevant question here, whether she will support the common sense proposal of Pierre Poilievre to ensure jail and not bail for repeat violent offenders so we can protect veterans and all Canadians.
Excuse me, Mr. Richards. So, like I said at the beginning, I know that the minister is there and people accompany her too, but talking about policy of party, I don't think it's relevant to the budget that we are discussing.
Let's let the minister answer if she'd like, unless she'd like to evade the question as well.
Mr. Chair.
Minister,
so, Mr. Richards, would you try, please, to present your question in another way? You have 1 minute left, and leave the time also for the minister to answer, please.
As I've said, it is the department's responsibility to ensure that veterans are taken care of, to ensure that we are there to provide services, but also ensure that we're there to take care of any of the issues that veterans have in terms of services that they need and support. And this is an area where the government is failing our veterans and all Canadians. So I believe that the minister should step up and answer the question. Will she support the proposal to ensure jail, not bail, for repeat violent offenders so that people like the veteran, 82-year-old veteran Jim DeMars can be protected within this country from violent offenders?
Yeah. Mr. Richards, I'm so sorry. I think that we are still on the same page. So if you don't have any other questions, I think we'll go to another.
Chair, I think you should ask the minister to respond to the question. This is a relevant question. Veterans will be incredibly disappointed if the minister refuses to answer this question. So, Minister, I ask you to please answer the question so that veterans can hear where you stand.
Yeah, Mr. Richards, like I said, we are discussing budget, and you are talking about policy.
Okay, well, this is a minister who professes to be more than a part-time minister. I think she's proven that all she is is a part-time minister. She won't even respond to a relevant question about the safety and security of our veterans.
Okay, Mr. Richards, okay, so you're still on the same page, and I'm not going to give the floor to the minister to answer that question. But for now, we're going to go for 6 minutes to Mr. Miao. It's your turn, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And great to see you back here, Minister. It's always a pleasure seeing you at our committee. Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm quite proud the fact that my home province of British Columbia will be hosting the 2025 Invictus Game to the world and allowing us to watch veterans and members of the armed forces to compete in the game. And 2 weeks ago, Vancouver hosted the Grey Cup, and I was honored to present this Jake Goddard Veterans Trophy to Horgan Huss of the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Throughout the Canadian Football League season, Horgan best demonstrated the attribute of Canada's veterans, and the Invictus Game used the power of sport to inspire recovery, support rehabilitation, and generate a wider understanding of and respect for wounded, injured, and sick service member and veterans. Can you share with this committee your hopes for what the 2025 Invictus Game will accomplish?
Well, thank you so much, MP Miao, for that question. And again, Canada should be very proud that next year in 2025, we'll be hosting the 2025 Winter Invictus Games. As a country, we are very privileged that we've been chosen a second time in order to host these games. The unique part about these games this time, it's the first time that we'll be hosting winter games, hybrid games, if you will, with both outdoor activities like the skeleton, if you will, in Whistler and other outdoor sports. And also we'll be hosting the traditional sports as well that will be held inside in Vancouver. In Canada, we'll be having more than 530 competitors that will be in our country to compete, and they'll be representing 20 nations. I truly hope that Canadians will take the time to watch these sporting events because to me, it truly shows the resilience, the tenacity, and the endurance that our veterans have shown. Again, it's an opportunity for them to get better through sports. I had the privilege of joining a team in Dusseldorf in Germany back last year when they competed. And I have to say it was life-changing to see these individuals, these athletes, these competitors really give it their all. So I'm looking forward to being there, and I'm certainly hoping that many of our committee members will be able to take part to witness it either in person or on TV, because it certainly will be a show to watch.
Thank you for that. And earlier this year, we heard that there were some issues with insurance for the participants. You committed to rectifying this, and can you provide us with the latest update?
Yes, absolutely. So the situation with respect to the lack of insurance came up this year, and we wanted to ensure that for our athletes going forward, that insurance coverage would be made available. And some folks in the committee actually brought that matter up, Ms. Blaney, I believe it was. So I'm happy to report that the insurance coverage for our 2025 athletes is certainly going to be in place. We will be meeting with the athletes, and I say we, the officials will be meeting with the athletes in January at their winter training camp in order to ensure that they're properly advised of this insurance and what it entails. And from there as well, Veterans Affairs Canada has assigned a case manager to the team because we also want to make sure that a follow-up will be done 3 weeks after the game, 3 months after the game, 6 months after the game, and a year after the game to make sure that the appropriate follow-ups are done. This is a matter that we take very seriously. And again, we want to ensure that our athletes have access to the coverage that they deserve.
Minister, since you were here last at committee, our nations and Canadians from coast to coast mark Veterans Week and Remembrance Day. I know that you were visiting communities across Canada during that time frame. Could you tell us about some of these engagements and what you have learned from those experiences?
So thank you so much for that. As many of you around the table, Veterans Week has been a very, very busy week for me, and I'm sure that many of you have attended many events in your ridings or perhaps in other parts of the province or the country. We embarked on a coast-to-coast tour, if you will, making sure that we weren't only here in the nation's capital, but we went in small rural communities as we went to the bigger city events. We wanted to make sure that we were seen and that we took part in these many events. And I have to say that the highlights for me were probably meeting with a lot of the children as well that were at the events. I think it's truly important to make sure that we have ambassadors to make sure that they don't forget our past and that they will continue to share these stories of these brave men and women that have served. I also had the privilege of meeting with many veterans, either modern day veterans or more senior veterans, if you will, and again, was able to share and to hear many of their stories. I also had an opportunity to meet with General Romer in Toronto. I had the honor of meeting General Romer when we were back at the 80th anniversary, and I certainly wanted to go and say hi to him, and he is in fine form and talking to me about, his plans for the year ahead. So overall, we had some really great events that we participated in. We attended events in Nova Scotia, in Moncton, in Ontario, in British Columbia. So we really, really wanted to make sure that there was a good representation and a good different types of events that we were able to participate in.
During that with us. We recently had representative from the Aboriginal First Nation Veteran Council as part of our ongoing study, and they mentioned that their letter of understanding with Veterans Affairs. Could you tell us the benefit that have been realized as a result of this collaborative approach with the Aboriginal First Nation?
Are we talking about the letter of understanding with the AFN? Is that the one? Correct. Okay. My predecessor, Minister Macaulay, was able to sign a letter of understanding with the AFN, and I believe that it was in 2023, thereabouts. It was before that I had arrived. But the letter of intent really had 4 pillars, if you will. And number one, we certainly want to make sure that we assess and expand the outreach activities to include First Nations people as well. We also want to ensure that we establish clear points of contact between Indigenous veterans and Veterans Affairs Canada. And as such, we certainly have engagement teams that have been put in place to make sure that that work continues. We also agreed that we certainly want to have greater representation when it comes to commemorative types of events in making sure that they're always included in those events. And finally, to make sure that we support historical records of Indigenous veterans. So very quickly, that's a bit of the overview of the letter of intent, and I look forward to working with the AFN.
Thank you very much. Et maintenant, j'invite le deuxième vice-président du
I would like
comité,
to
Monsieur
invite
Luc
the
Désilets,
Vice
pour les
Chair of the
6
committee,
prochaines
Mr. Luc
minutes.
Désilets, to ask questions for the next 6 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'd like to welcome all of our colleagues. Thank you very much, dear guests, for being with us today. Minister, I have a rather special question, and I want us to perhaps do a bit of research on this. I know you won't have the answer in hand. We're speaking about money. Veterans Affairs have given $3 million to a project which was part of a whole of $10 million, which is called the Road of Heroes. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. Perhaps, perhaps not. This project includes the installation of 2 identical sculptures in 2 road stops, which aim to pay tribute. And the project was completed 2 years ago. And 2 veterans have complained about it. It wants to render tribute to 67 persons for their final service, the ultimate service, and we all understand what this expression is. But the problem is this. There are 67 individuals whose names appear on this, whose profiles are indicated on the 2 sculptures. That is, over those 67 people, there are only 20 who died in service. 4 never wore the uniform, and 12 are still alive. They're very much alive and doing very well indeed. Of course, you're all familiar with Captain Le Seller. Her name is there. It is on one of the sculptures. Her profile is part of the sculpture, and she reached out to me on this. She said, I'm not dead, and I'm very much alive, and I in fact spoke to her this morning. So on that sculpture, which aims once again to pay tribute to those who made the ultimate sacrifice, there's also Romeo Dallaire. We all know him here around the table. And there are a number of names of francophones who are also still alive: Guylaine Lamoureux, Natacha Dubuchy, Monsieur Jean-Baptiste. So the ultimate sacrifice represents 67 names that we see on the sculpture, and it's led to a bit of an issue. So I don't know if some of you perhaps could give me some information on that. This was money funded by a specific veterans programs. We received a number of complaints. You've been able to see, Mr. Désilets. And I believe that we are currently working with the organizers of the monument in order to glean more information about what they're going to do to find a solution to these issues. I don't have the final decision in hand today, but no doubt we can do the follow-up with the members of the committee. I think that was both the demand and the expectation raised. That is to remove the names, or the sculptures, rather. The veterans are, of course, frustrated. They found out that people will be before those monuments, whereas these people are very much alive. It is a major mistake, I believe, and the request will be, of course, that apologies be made to these individuals. Ms. Allaire never received any calls from anybody. She learned about this through a friend, and she was told that her name was on this monument, giving tribute to those who are deceased. Mr. Dallaire's name was all there, so they would like to get an apology. In fact, she's asking that the monument to be removed, that her profile on the sculpture is there, and it should not be there. I believe. So perhaps if you could give us follow-up on this, and also on the process. This is $3 million that comes from Veterans Affairs. So how is it possible that within this command chain, or rather the decision-making process, is it possible that this list was endorsed? So we would greatly appreciate this. If you could send that to the committee, we'd greatly appreciate it. If I may speak to this, and I forgot to commend you for your appointment. This said, Mrs. Petit-Patel, you've referred to the $4 million that will be invested. I understand that commemoration, this is new money. Is that correct? It's money that we've invested for commemorations for the 80th anniversary of D-Day, as well as for the delegation. You're saying that there will be new commemoration for D-Day. That's money that had been spent for the events that took place last June. This has been spent, yes. So that's not new money. It is new money. There is new money for activities that took place in June 2024 that we took part in, as well as the delegation recently. You mentioned $2 million as part of a fund for a family's well-being fund. Is this new money? It's an increase vis-a-vis the envelope already in place. We had community groups that were able to make applications to obtain money under this fund to launch a number of different programs for families, etc. So it's in addition to money already in existence. That's good news. Could you tell us overall what concrete steps will be taken in order to, and perhaps you've already answered this, but to meet with the urgent request put in place by veterans? I don't quite follow your question. Well, there's a great deal of money being invested. Are there amounts earmarked to meet with urgent requests? For example, last week's veteran who's not here, but is there any money available anywhere to meet with the urgent requests put in by veterans? Yes, we have created an emergency fund that is there to answer emergency requests. We don't have a specific envelope as such, but veterans can apply for funds. This can be medical services. This could cover financial needs to pay their first rentals. It could be to pay an electricity bill. It could be any kind of emergency that they're facing that we've been made aware of. And finally, you can put in a request to the Veterans Affairs Department. We will assess this and then we'll disperse. I must also say that a number of legions and community groups work with Veterans Affairs, and often they contact us directly in order to indicate to us where this money could be sent. Thank you very much.
Ms. Rachel Blenny for 6 minutes, please. Ms. Blenny.
Well, thank you, Chair, and I thank the Minister and your team for being here with us today. So the first question that I have is our office has been a bit inundated, Minister, in the last week or so with a new VAC policy on VIP benefits for veterans with mental health conditions. What we've heard from multiple veterans is that they are now being required to have paperwork, a questionnaire actually filled out every year to prove that they still need the VIP benefits. They were quite shocked to receive this. Many veterans are calling, and what they're understanding is that this policy does not apply to veterans with physical injuries or conditions. So I guess my two questions around this is, number one, I know that the department has had a very clear commitment to conducting a gender-based analysis on every policy, and I'm concerned that it wasn't done on this one because, of course, this disproportionately will impact women veterans who have MST claims. And the other thing that I'm concerned about is, why is an extra step of red tape being added to this benefit that previously didn't require this paperwork? And I want to add that I've also talked to a lot of medical professionals who are resisting filling out paperwork. They are reimbursed for filling out the paperwork for VAC, but often they have to wait so long to get the reimbursement. They are now telling the veterans that they won't do it. So when I put all of those things together, I'm really concerned about what that's going to mean for vulnerable people who have mental health issues that have to prove every year now that they still have that mental health issue. And it also goes back to what I've been talking about is around trauma-informed care. And to me, this is, again, another example of a complete lack of trauma-informed care. So I'm just wondering if you could help me understand what's happening.
Well, thank you, Ms. Blaney, for bringing this matter up. Again, I'll certainly be following up with the department. I can tell you that when it comes to accessing services, especially for individuals that are dealing or living with mental health conditions, we certainly don't want to add another layer of complexity to that. We want to make sure that they have access to the services that they deserve and that they need. With respect as well to the other part of your question, to ensure that our staff have trauma-informed training, again, with the priority that has laid out in the 42 recommendations that you guys brought forward in the Women's Report, that is top of mind for me and a priority for the department. With respect to the change, however, I'm going to have to ask one of my officials because I really would like to hear a bit more about that, but I certainly will follow up on the matter.
Well, I think what would be helpful for the committee is if we could just get a response back in writing that says if this has changed, why it's changed, and if a GBA analysis was done on it. I think that's really important for us. So I was very pleased to see that the Women Veterans Advisory Committee was announced today. There are a few names I wish were on there that are not, but we'll talk about that at a later time. But I really do have a few questions. One of them is around the terms of reference. It talks about having quarterly meetings. We know that a federal election is going to be happening next year. We know that these folks have to get together and learn a lot. I'm wondering if you can talk about, is there any focus on having more meetings happen prior to the election so that they can start getting up to speed?
So thank you for that. And again, Ms. Blaney, I, like you, was very pleased that we were finally able to announce the council. I was very anxious and eager, and it took longer than I thought and that I hoped for, but today we are finally able to make the announcement. Last week, I called all the members personally and was thrilled that every one of them, agreed to take part in the council. And I think if you guys looked at the name of the candidates, they're very well suited, and many others who applied, because we really had hundreds of people that applied to be on this council. I've committed to the advisory council that we will be meeting in January. My team has already been in touch with them and they've already started having those conversations, but we're planning on having our first meeting in January in person, probably here in Ottawa. And then from there, we'll be able to look at the calendar moving forward. But they are really eager, as I am, out of the gate and really want to hit the road running and starting to do the important work that we expect of them.
Well, thank you for that. But it also brings me to another important conversation, and I'd love to hear from you, is I am concerned about the fact that some of them have known relationships with the CAF, DND, and VAC that could represent competing interests for them to be able to speak really freely. So, for example, some of them are still serving. Some of them work presently for the government, or they work for groups or organizations that depend on VAC for their funding. I have some examples here that I won't name, but there are people still serving and part of these things. So I'm just wondering, how is this going to be addressed, these competing interests that could be a barrier for these women to really speak as openly as we would like to see them?
We certainly want to ensure that the representation of the council really reflects serving members and retired members, both of the RCMP and the CAF. Again, if we look at the selection process, the Women's Council told us that they wanted to ensure that the selection of the members were not going to be by the member or were going to be by the department. So the board was set up and they worked really, really hard at interviewing these individuals and making sure that we had a good representation of folks that are working, CAF, RCMP, but also that retired experience. We expect for these individuals to speak freely, of course, and to share with us their issues and their challenges.
I'm sorry, how is that going to be addressed? Is there any discussions happening about how do you address those issues that are a conflict? How do you make sure that this is a safe space for especially women in uniform to be able to share things that could be happening without retaliation? We've heard again and again, and during the women's study, where women spoke about coming out and speaking on things, and they faced really hard things during their service. So I'm just wondering, like, I hear you. I'm not negating any of their skill sets. What I'm saying is, how are we making sure that those potential conflict of interest do not become issues that delay or disrupt the work that this committee is doing, or council?
Yeah, it's an important question that you raised, Ms. Blaney. And again, we'll have those conversations with the council member in January, because I want to ensure that they feel absolutely free to speak their mind. If we want to address discrimination barriers that women are still facing today in the Canadian Armed Forces and the RCMP, to me, it's really important to have individuals that are still presently serving now. Issues that happened 20 years ago may still be happening, but there may be new issues that are happening today as well. And that's why that I feel it's really important to make sure that we have folks in different parts of their career represented on this council.
Thank you so much. As you know, we have a second round of questions, so we have to give time for colleagues to ask the questions. So I start with Mrs. Kathy Rogenthal for 5 minutes. Please.
All right. Thank you so much, Chair. And thank you, Minister, for being here, and Mr. Harris and Mr. Freeman as well. So the voted appropriations in the supplementary estimates B 2024-25 are for $942.5 million. It indicates that the vast amount of that, $819.4 million, is for pain and suffering compensation. So I'm looking at this, and that's a 51.6% increase compared to what was in the main estimates. And in the explanation documents in regard to this, it says it's because of an increased number of applications, but also a higher than expected number of veterans opting for a lump sum. And then goes on to say that by default, when they apply for their pain and suffering compensation, by default, it goes into monthly installments, and that they have to submit a written request to request it in a lump sum. The goal was that they thought this would incentivize our veterans to go with a monthly installment, because you have the potential to live out longer than the time with the lump sum. So it's surprising to me that this is the route that this is going. And I have a question right away around having to submit a written request for the lump sum when they're applying for the compensation. Are they aware that it's default? Is there not a way to say you can make a choice here, monthly or in a lump sum? Is that not part of the application?
I'll answer part of your question, and then I'll turn it over.
As briefly as possible.
Absolutely.
Please.
So with respect to the numbers that you've shown, we are seeing year after year a 10% increase in application for benefits. This year alone, we are on track for 94,000 applications that are coming through the department. With respect to the lump sum, the information there, perhaps Stephen, you can just explain kind of what is given to the
Sum?
About 60 to 65% are going to the lump sum.
Okay, application. So are they able to say immediately they would prefer the lump sum versus the monthly?
They're not. In the legislation, it's described initially as a monthly, and then they have the opportunity to select a lump sum payout. One of the recommendations that we've had from numerous committees and others is to be able to speed up that process for veterans, and that's what's resulted in having the form go out with the decision letter as well, allowing decisions to be happening quickly.
Okay, so they can't process that when they actually are applying for the lump sum. They have to wait to get it awarded, and then they get to make that decision. So have you followed up, and how have you followed up to find out why there's this preference for the lump sum? That seems contrary to what the expectations were.
I think the design of the program was meant to encourage people, as you noted, to take the monthly amount. People can make their own decisions with respect to how they wish to receive their disability compensation, and many are doing that. In some cases, it could be small amounts that their disability pension awarded amount, or sorry, their disability pain and suffering compensation is not a very small amount, maybe $25,000. And so over a long period of time, it may not be worth it.
Yeah, I hear you. Thank you. So VAC's data, according to the Office of the Ombudsman, from December of 2022 indicated that 65% of veterans eligible for pain and suffering compensation were choosing a lump sum. So that was back in 2022. Are you aware of the percentages now for 23, 24, and 24, 25, and just a yes, no? And
That's what I have for the figure right now is still between 60 and 65%.
so comparable to
Consistent.
what it's been, and so the amount. Okay. So how have you followed up with those who chose the lump sum to do any kind of research to find out why they're making that choice?
I think there's been many conversations that have happened through veteran engagements, forums, and others.
Writing that shows why this change is taking place? I
Um,
wonder if it isn't because they feel safer having their money in their hands to improve their own life quality. Are they moving into small businesses and needing those? Like, what is the rationale for doing that? We don't know.
I don't, not in every individual situation may be different. And to your point, somebody may wish to have that money immediately and they are going to put it to use for something specific to them.
I think it would be good to find out why, because that's a significant percentage. Appropriation of $2 million for Veterans Family and Wellbeing Fund with a focus on equity deserving groups. Give me just a very brief description of what that means. For what purpose with equity deserving groups?
So with respect to underrepresented groups that we've seen, oftentimes they haven't had access to perhaps the services that they needed. And again, monies were put aside to ensure that community groups could apply for funding in order to ensure that those needs of those veterans were met.
Thank you. So of $2.75 million for government advertising programs, what, obviously if you have the money, you know what you're going to be advertising. So how are you targeting women veterans and those transitioning to civilian life? What are the actual advertising programs that are going to take place?
Very good question, Ms. Wagenthal. So those most of that, those programs are during Veterans Month, if you will, to make sure that we, promote Veterans Month and also to promote veterans. But also it's to ensure that veterans are aware of the services and support that are available to them. And our ad campaigns that we have certainly will depict what a veteran looks like. And it can be, a male, a female. It can be, we really want to make sure that it's very
reflective. You have them laid out
Mm-hmm.
already so as to come to that number of
Last
$2.7
question.
million?
Can you, I didn't hear your question.
Well, to come up with an amount, you have to decide what it is you're going to spend it on in advance. So all of that has been laid out as far as what that money will go towards. It's more, so it's more funding. So
Again, we want to, one priority that I've heard from veterans time and time again and members from the committee is that they want to ensure that veterans are aware that they are entitled to services and benefits. And a big part of the ad campaign that we're doing is really encouraging them, if they are a veteran, making sure, number one, that they self-identify as a veteran.
Thank you. I'm so sorry. Thank you very much. So now let's get to Miss Lisa Hefner for 5 minutes, please. Miss Hefner.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Minister and team, for being here with us today. I know my colleague Rachel Blaney already sort of brought up the Women's Veterans Council, whose members we just learned about today, and I kind of want to go back there as well. I'm not sure if there's anything that you didn't have a chance to mention about the selection of the candidates today, but perhaps you can go back and fill in any blanks that you may have left. But also tell us more about the significance of this council. What do you hope comes out of this whole exercise?
Well, thank you so much, Ms. Hefner, for that question. And again, the report that you did when it came to the women's the women's study that you did, one of the recommendations was to form a women's advisory council. I have to say that was well on its way of being created, but I was very pleased to see it as one of the recommendations in the report. It's truly important when women have indicated to us that they feel invisible. We don't want them to feel invisible anymore. And I think it's really important to ensure that we have an advisory council that will provide me advice with respect to what are the barriers, what are the obstacles, what is the discrimination, what are the needs of women veterans. So moving forward, I'm looking forward to receiving the advice and recommendations from these women. As I've indicated to Ms. Blaney, we had hundreds of people that applied to be members of the council. I was really quite pleased to see the level of interest that we had, and folks from coast to coast to coast. The selection committee took their time and interviewed the candidates, And today, as indicated, we were able to announce the 12 members of the council. And just for those individuals that are watching or listening to us, if you don't mind, I would like to kind of share with the committee who are these folks, because I know that many of them have already appeared before the committee here in different ways. So we have Constable retired Jennifer Chorney from the RCMP, Warrant Officer retired Céline Filion from the CAF, Major Dawn Leblanc from the CAF, Corporal retired Sarah Lafergie from the RCMP, Captain retired Hélène Le Saleur from CAF, Sergeant retired Jessica Miller from the CAF, Colonel à la retraite Tella Morrison, Dr. Wen Ni from FAC, les Forces armées canadiennes, Caporal Ellen Peters de la GRC, Capitaine à la retraite Lindsay Shields des Forces armées canadiennes, gendarme à la retraite Viviane Stewart de la GRC, ainsi que la lieutenant-colonel à la retraite Eleanor Taylor des Forces armées canadiennes. On voit une bonne représentation de la GRC, des Forces
So
armées
we see some good
canadiennes.
representation
We
from
also see
RCMP
here that
and the
there's
Canadian Armed
individuals from all
Forces.
parts of the country. It's not just here in Ottawa. It's really from coast to coast. We have francophones and anglophones. We really want to make sure that we had a good representation. And again, as I've indicated, I spoke to each and every one of them, or most of every one of them that I was able to reach last week to congratulate them. And we'll be having our first meeting in January.
You said that they were excited about this opportunity. Can you tell us more about really what they want to do with it and what they've told you?
Again, I think they certainly see this as an opportunity to be able to share some advice to the minister and also to the department. They certainly have a lot of lived experience, and that's why that they were chosen as well to be on this council. Yes, their professional experience, is stellar, but also we really want to hear about their lived experience, either within the forces, the RCMP, or as a Canadian, as a CAF member. So again, looking forward to hearing their advice and being able to work with them.
What sort of influence will their discussions have on the greater VAC?
Well, I'm asking them to take on some serious work. We are talking women in the forces, women in the Canadian Armed Forces, women veterans, and we certainly want to make sure that we improve the lives of those who serve our country. So I'm looking forward to receiving their advice, and I'm going to be taking their advice very seriously as we move forward with our policies and our decisions. Just as the women's report, the ACVA report with the 42 recommendations that you guys have brought forward, there's a lot of work that needs to be done here. And I'm ready to roll up my sleeves, already have, and really want to hit the ground running and making sure that we're able to do as much as we can in order to better the lives of our women veterans.
I have full confidence in you and all of that. So thank you for your work, Minister. Also, last week, we had visits from some members of Parliament from Ukraine. I know they visited us at Status of Women Committee, and we talked about things like gender-based violence. And they also visited with members of this committee. Would you tell us what sort of advice Veterans Affairs Canada can give to Ukraine? Is there anything we can do to help them?
Well, I was really pleased to hear that the delegation met with folks here in Ottawa. I last year met with the First Lady, Madame Zelensky, and a group of her delegates from the Ukraine as well. They came down, and the First Lady's priority is really mental health of veterans when they return home. And she wants to ensure that those services are put in place. And they're starting from scratch. Mental health services in Ukraine is not something that they talk about openly as we do here in Canada. So they are really wanting to look at best practices and how can they put in place the services that our veterans need. So last year when we met with them, we signed a letter of understanding indicating that we would share, as much information as we can with them, any practices, any research that we have that we are willing and able and really want to take part in that sharing of information. Just last week as well, or 2 weeks ago, there was another delegation that was here as well, and I believe many members from the committee perhaps met with them as well, and again, wanting to share that information. Inside of Veterans Affairs Canada as well, we've organized an internal committee to make sure that that sharing of information is done easier, and again, we want to work collaboratively with the Ukrainian government, with the embassy here in Ottawa, to do all that we can to provide them with the assistance that they need.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Et maintenant, je passe la parole à Monsieur Luc Désilets.
And now over to Mr. Luc Désilets for 2 2.5 minutes. Over to you, Mr. Desilets. So, could you please explain your understanding with regard to the increase in the applications or requests for disability benefits? Thank you very much. I think we already talked about the announcements and what we're doing to promote the benefits and services available at Veteran Affairs Canada. And I think this is contributing to get people to come up to us to apply for services. Health is quite tricky. Physical and mental health is a tricky issue, and people from the former armed forces found themselves in really dangerous situations, and they've got injuries, physical and mental injuries, which occur as a result of this exposure to danger. And even if there is no war or no major conflict that's serving across the country and in other areas where they could suffer different forms of injuries. Thank you. Now, in connection with Ms. Blaney's question earlier, I was surprised to learn that there was a new form. Have we envisaged the possibility of trying to make a few efforts in terms of red tape? More employees is becoming bigger and bigger, and there's more and more bureaucracy, and becomes more and more problematic for veterans who arrive already damaged from some missions. So is there a possibility of having a pilot in place so that can be able to refer the names of individuals who are unable to fill up this paperwork? We're always trying to review forms and the request forms that are put at the disposal of veterans to ensure that they are able, and in most cases, they're able to get assistance from experts in mental health and medical health, so that they can assist these veterans to fill up their forms. And the issue that was raised by Ms. Blaney earlier was not yet launched. And what we're currently doing is to ensure that we simplify veterans' access to these benefits. We should ask people who are close to these veterans, maybe their family doctor or their community support person, to judge if they need something, to assess if they need something, instead of asking a bureaucrat somewhere in an office somewhere. Well, it's beautiful. It's all theoretical what you're saying. And when you have to do with legions, we know that it's not these legions that are the most apt to deal with this. And yes, we can turn to community supports, but is there something else that Veteran Affairs has to assist veterans in difficulty to respond to their requests? Yes, we're currently trying to provide persons who can assist veterans not only to fill out forms, but also to help them to. We have mental health specialists in particular who can assist them.
And now let's go to Ms. Blaney, 2.5 minutes, please.
Well, thank you, Chair. And through you to the Minister, I know that you've probably been watching this committee closely, as I'm sure you always do. And we're currently just finished up a study on Indigenous and Black veterans. And I want to say that I've been really disappointed with the lack of engagement from the Black community. And we reached out a lot in our office and connected with multiple Black veterans who were very clear in their discussions with us that they had no faith in the process and that they would not attend any of our committee meetings. And that concerns me a lot. So more than a question, I just want to say, I think there's something happening there that is probably really serious. And I hope that the Minister will take some time to maybe explore that a little bit, because it always makes me sad when a particular group of veterans feels left out and feels that their contribution in a committee like ours wouldn't make a difference. So my next question for you is around women-only housing. We heard very clearly through the testimony repeatedly on the Women's Veteran Study that a lot of women felt that they couldn't access veteran housing because there's a mixture of people there that can make them feel really unsafe. They also spoke quite clearly about having current serving members popping by to visit, which might be a great experience for some veterans. For some of the women veterans who had experienced MST, it was very traumatizing to see someone come into their space wearing the uniform. I know that some money has been given to the Pepper Pod, but I'm not clear on what that's for and if that's actually moving towards having some veteran women only housing. So if I could get some clarity on what's happening on that and if there's any commitment to actually building some women only veterans housing to especially support women that we know are facing often higher rates of homelessness, especially Indigenous veteran women. So I'm just wondering, is there anything happening that we can be excited to look forward to support these women and keep them safe and keep them housed?
I promise I'll be concise. With respect to your first part of your question with Black veterans, please know that that is something that I'm seized with as well. We've done some work with the number 2 construction battalion, some of the family members as well. During Veterans Week, we actually were in Toronto where we unveiled a plaque in memory of all of those who served in the forces. And again, continued engagement continues with myself. I'm sorry to hear that they didn't want to appear at committee here because I think it could have been very, very valuable to hear their points of view. But know that I'm seized with that as well. With respect to housing and women, specifically to women veterans, again, it is an issue that I continue to hear about as well across the country. The $80 million announcement that we made through Infrastructure Canada is in order to provide rent supports and also wraparound services. So if a female veteran, let's say, chooses that she wants to live in a specific apartment building and needs that additional support, those types of rent supports would be able to follow her, if you will. We want to make sure that they are the ones that choose. And if they don't want to stay in a specific building, they don't have to do so. So the rent support is a support that follows them, if you will, as opposed to it being attached to a specific building. And the other thing as well, ensuring that people have access to the wraparound services that they need is truly important. We want to make sure that we set veterans up for success, and sometimes they need a hand. And if through the wraparound services that we provide can help them, I think it'll be beneficial, and keeping them housed even longer as well.
Thank you, Minister. I know we start a little bit late, and I think that all members would like to have a full hours with you, Minister, and after with the officials. So I'd like to invite Mr. Dodell for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Minister, for being here today. And thank you as well for your team. I'm just going to go back just for a quick second here because I found it quite interesting to my colleagues' questions a little bit earlier. You're definitely a busy minister, as we know that Minister of Veterans Affairs, and now you're going to be Minister of Employment and Minister of Workforce Development as well. And I'm sure it's an honor to be asked. It certainly, I would think from anyone's perspective, it's probably a nod that you're doing a good job. My question is more to the lines that with over 150 members of your party, why you wouldn't look for somebody else that was there. I know you were asked, but just for each department and the amount of time, I know myself as a member of Parliament, how busy I am in my riding, not being a minister, and taking care of all the individuals that we have. Out of 150 other members in your party, was there any suggestions on your behalf that perhaps maybe someone else could have an opportunity? Or the other side of it is there not a minister that perhaps isn't putting their name forward again that would have that experience in a ministerial department that could probably dedicate more time, whether it's because I think, quite honestly, Minister, I think that it doesn't matter what ministry this is, you can't really dedicate the same amount of time that you did before. So my question, I guess, basically is, like, maybe you can keep up on this file then, but are we doing justice on the other file? And why wouldn't you as a leader? I know it's a great nod for you to get the accolades and be chosen, and like I say, great track record then obviously for your party. But did you ever put forward that I really want to concentrate on what I have here, and someone else would probably do a better job if they could really dedicate 100% of their time?
I'm going to respond to that question this way. I think my track record speaks for itself. I'm a hardworking MP, I'm a dedicated MP, and I'm a dedicated minister. As I've indicated, I'm not scared of hard work. I'm not scared of long hours. This is a short-term commitment that the Prime Minister has asked me to assume because there's probably going to be some appointments made in the very near future.
So I'm not trying to pick on what you do in your role, because like I said, it's a compliment to be asked. There's no doubt about it. It would be a certain honor, and it speaks well, I guess, to your work ethic. But I'm just being, is there not anybody else out of 150 individuals that probably could have dedicated more time to either one of the files? And then secondly, you said there's going to be an announcement. How long do you think that will be that these two departments will not have a dedicated minister?
Well, I think, first of all, I don't agree with the premise of your question that I am dedicated to these three responsibilities at this time. I was the former official languages minister. I know the file very well. I know this file very well, and I am certainly getting briefed up on ESDC.
Once again, Minister, I'm not asking about your qualifications or what you do. I'm going to just say for the departments themselves. I understand, obviously, like you said, it's fantastic, but I think for those departments, out of the amount of people and individuals that are part of the party, even if you didn't suggest it, you would think that the government may suggest it, the fact that there's other ministers that have been there before that could dedicate 100% of the time. That is my point. It's no slight to you as the minister doing your role here. It's just an overview of running an operation. The same if it was a hockey team, you wouldn't do that. You would be busy running your hockey team. And that's sort of my question or comment. It's not you or your ability. It's just as an overall government, do you not think that it would be a better opportunity for not only for the individuals, but for that are in the government, but also do you not think it's a better opportunity for each department to have one individual to talk to and to call?
Again, my response to you is that I'm a very hard worker. I'm not scared of long hours, and that's exactly what I'm doing right now. And I'm thrilled to be able to continue being the Minister of Veterans Affairs. It is a portfolio that is near and dear to my heart. Also official languages, and I'm briefing up on the other portfolio at this point in time. This is a temporary measure, and again, look forward to continuing working with the committee members here.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Dodell. And the last questions from Mr. Randip Sarai for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Minister, for being here. As noted in your opening remarks, the bulk of the estimates funds for VAC or benefit payments for supports that go directly to veterans for a variety of programs. Last year, I think we all remember when Conservatives obstructed the estimate process with a marathon of votes, with the Conservatives voting against, I think, every single program and every single penny of investment. Fast forward a year's time, and now not much has changed, as they're paralyzing the House, preventing the advancement of key legislation while voting against a tax cut for all Canadians. Can you tell us why it's so important that we pass the estimates, and what are the impacts of these benefits?
Thanks so much, MP Sarai. Again, the investments that we're making in order to help support veterans and their families are imperative. As we've indicated this year, we are asking, when it comes to SUPS-B, we're talking about a $954 million in additional benefits payments that we'll be providing to veterans and their families. It's important to ensure that the SUPs go through the House quickly, because we want to ensure that no payments are going to be delayed. These are services and benefits that our veterans are counting on, and I certainly hope that all members of the House of Commons are going to vote in favor of the estimates.
So we know that the Conservatives made deep cuts to VAC's commemoration work, but in this year's estimate, there's a line item to invest $3.8 million to support the Juno Beach Centre. Can you talk about the significance of the Juno Beach Centre and why our government has made the investments to help the centre preserve the legacy of all Canadians who served during the Second World War?
Yeah, so thank you so much for that question. And again, I'm really pleased to see that the government continues to support the Juno Beach Centre, as it is an important museum, if you will, of the Second World War and Canada's contributions and the sacrifices that we've made. So we continue to provide the support that they do need in order to ensure that those operations continue. Many of us who attended different types of commemorative events visited the centre, and I can say that the work that they do there is really, really important. The other part of the work at the centre that I think is pretty important as well, and I found this out just recently, that the staff as well, the young people that work there, you know, are university students, they're Canadians, and they're proud bilingual Canadians that are working there and making sure that, you know, they're able to answer the questions of the tourists that attend the centre. And just this week, I'm going to be meeting actually with the new president of the centre, Monsieur Christopher Laboissière, who was recently named and just starting his term. So I'm looking forward to meeting with him and finding out what his priorities are going to be as he begins this new journey as president.
Minister, I found it a little appalling from my Conservative colleagues that in 2 rounds of questioning, the only thing they asked about is whether you're competent enough to have multiple portfolios. I actually found it quite misogynistic, I think, that this isn't a question asked to a female minister who's given multiple portfolios. Have you, and you may not know the answer to this, but have you heard of such a question to you by other parties or other ministers that may be male that have ever been asked this question when they've been given multiple portfolios as a cabinet minister?
No, I can say
Chair?
I can't.
Point of order.
Yeah, excuse me, Minister.
The nerve there, eh?
Excuse me, I have a point of order, but I can see you, Mr. Richard. I think that it's you. But can you turn on your...
Pardon me, I didn't realize the camera was off. Sorry, Chair. I guess what I wanted to point out, Chair, is throughout today's meeting, there have been a number of questions asked that you ruled that my question wasn't relevant, even though it related directly to a veteran, directly to something that is supposed to be the responsibility of the government to ensure for our veterans. And since that time, there's been a number of questions asked that certainly weren't on the estimates either. I think you were correct in not ruling on any of those other questions out of order, because I think there should be latitude on that. But having said that, you've made that ruling, and now someone is asking a question, which is essentially trying to slander individuals of this committee. I think what you should be doing here is holding this member to the same standard that you held me, because frankly, the questions were not had nothing to do with the minister as an individual. It had to do with the role and the responsibility of the minister. So for someone to slander other individuals, I think you should rule that question's out of order, Chair.
Thank you for your intervention, Mr. Richards. But I think that you do remember that when I make the ruling on your question, it was not about how many files that the minister has. And you also have one colleague of yours who asked question about that, and I didn't rule. So we can understand that people can ask questions about how many files she has. This is not... Sorry, this is not a point of order. So I'd like
the question
to...
had nothing to do with her files. It had to do with trying to slander other individuals.
Okay.
I think your bias needs to stop showing.
I already make the ruling on that. So now we have 1 minute and a half left. So I'd like to listen to the answer from Minister Petitpas-Taylor. Please, Minister.
Well, again, no, I have never been asked that question by any other member, actually, Mr. Sarai. I'm a bit surprised to hear this type of questioning today when I'm here for main estimates. Sup B, we're here to talk about benefits and supports to veterans, and if I would hope that the members of the committee would be focusing on that and not about partisan attacks.
Thank you, Minister. And lastly, can you update the committee on your government's veterans employment strategy and how we can continue supporting CAF members when they're preparing for their next chapter?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And actually, it kind of falls well with ESDC right now as well, because when it comes to veterans employment, when we talk about employment workforce, both departments certainly go hand in hand in a lot of ways. So just this year, we launched the Veterans Employment Strategy. We're working with veterans and making sure that they can find meaningful employment. We are also making sure that we are working with employers that for them to be aware that, in any given year, we have approximately 8,000 members of the Canadian Armed Forces that are retiring. And these are skilled, qualified, able individuals that many of them want to start another career. So we're working with that pool of individuals as well. And finally, working with many other organizations that provide services to veterans. So I'm really excited with the work that's being done there. We've just launched it this year. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done. But the feedback that I've received from veterans so far has been very, very positive. The department as well also started a LinkedIn app, or I don't know what the word, account, if you will, thank you, for veterans. And again, it's been served as a very useful tool to our veterans as well. So again, we continue to try to improve the services and benefits and making sure that veterans are meaningfully employed and not underemployed is a priority of mine. And again, we'll continue to work in that vein.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Ministre.
Thank you very much, Madam Minister. I know Mr. Harris and Mr. Freeman are going to stay with us for the next hour, but Madam Minister, and I must say that I was very pleased to see the consulting group, the advisory group for veterans nominate, and this is part of our recommendations. This is for female veterans. So we're very pleased that this recommendation was carried out. Thank you very much. So with this, dear members of the committee and Madam Minister, thank you very much for having been here. We'll just suspend for a few minutes and then we will continue our meeting. So we will just suspend briefly.
reprenons la séance et je voudrais
We are resuming
souhaiter
the
la
session.
bienvenue
I
aux
would like
nouveaux
to welcome
témoins
our
qui
new
sont pour la
witnesses.
plupart en ligne avec nous.
Most of them are online with
Et nous
us.
avons avec nous Madame Amy
So we're
Meunier,
welcoming Miss Amy Meunier,
sous-ministre adjointe, secteur de la
Assistant Deputy
commémoration des
Minister,
affaires publiques par
Commemoration and Public Affairs
vidéoconférence.
Branch by video
Nous avons
conference.
aussi Monsieur Pierre
There's also
Tessier,
Mr. Pierre
sous-ministre
Tessier,
adjoint, secteur de la
Assistant
dirigeante
Deputy
principale
Minister,
des
Chief
finances et
Financial
services
Officer,
ministériels
and
par
Corporate
vidéoconférence.
Services, joining us by
Et
video conference.
aussi par
As
vidéoconférence,
well,
Monsieur
joining us by video conference,
Jonathan Adams,
Mr.
directeur général
Jonathan
des
Adams,
finances, est
Director
toujours
General
là.
of
Il était là à la
Finance.
première partie.
He was there during the
Ainsi
first
que
part
Monsieur
as well.
Stephen Harris,
And Mr.
sous-ministre
Stephen
adjoint
Harris,
principal,
Senior
secteur
Assistant
de la
Deputy
prestation de
Minister,
services,
Service
et
Delivery
Monsieur
Branch,
Mitch Freeman,
and Mr.
sous-ministre
Mitch
adjoint par
Freeman,
intérim,
Acting Assistant
secteur
Deputy
des politiques
Minister,
stratégiques, de la planification et
Strategic
du
Policy
rangement.
Planning and
Donc,
Performance Branch.
puisqu'il n'y a pas de remarques
Since
d'ouverture, nous
there are
allons
no
tout de suite
opening
aller
remarks,
aux
we will
questions.
move
Et je
directly
préviens
to
aussi les
the
membres que
question
nous
period.
allons
And I would
y être
also like to
jusqu'à
indicate to the
8h35,
members
donc
that we will be
17h35.
here till
Et pour commencer,
5:35.
donc j'invite,
To begin,
par vidéoconférence,
and
Monsieur
again by
Blake
video conference, I
Richards
would like
for
to
6
ask
minutes,
Mr.
please.
Blake Richards to ask questions for 6 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us today. I've got a number of things I'd like to ask you about. I'd like to start with the fact that you now have a part-time minister for the department. Can you tell us how that's going to impact the senior leadership within the department and the roles and responsibilities and duties of the senior leadership when you're dealing with a part-time minister?
I'm happy to take that question. Continue to work with the minister and with her office to make sure that any support that we need from the minister and the minister's office is available when we need it. We continue to brief the minister on key files, and she continues to make herself available for us to do so. So from our perspective, we just continue to work as was previous.
So would that mean that that you're saying the minister is so uninvolved in the running of the department that her presence, or in this case lack thereof, won't have any major impact on the operation of the department?
I don't think that's what I said at all. I just said that when there is a requirement for the minister to be briefed, as I think the chair knows and members know, there are a number of documents, approaches, and other things that require the minister's support and signature, whether those be Treasury Board submissions, budget submissions, any number of things that the minister is involved in from a decision-making point of view. And we continue to brief the minister on the ongoing work of the department, areas of importance for veterans and others.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to ask you about sort of return to a question that we asked of one of the officials within the department a couple of weeks ago when they were at committee as part of the study that we have ongoing about Black and Indigenous veterans. And at the time, I asked if Indigenous veterans who receive benefits from Indigenous Services Canada would have those benefits counted as income as part of income testing, and therefore have their potentially have any VAC entitlements lowered on them. At that time, we had received a commitment to have an answer provided to the committee. No answer has been forthcoming yet. Do you have an answer to that question now?
We'll make sure that the answer is actually provided to the committee chair and the president. But I can confirm for you that no one would be affected for the Indigenous benefit that you had referenced in the earlier meeting. Mr. Chair, we've gone back and looked at, it's not one of the things that is offset from income from a Veterans Affairs point of view. And in fact, I believe the benefit that's being referred to from the Indigenous point of view is really only available for individuals who are in very dire needs and circumstances. In other words, very low income. Veterans who are with Veterans Affairs, Indigenous veterans who are with Veterans Affairs, tend to have income supports that would probably make it impossible for them to get the benefit in the first place, because they're being funded at a higher level.
Okay, so if you could just go and confirm that about all of the various benefits, could we ask that you provide that to this committee before the House rises for the recess in December here?
We'll certainly endeavor to do so. If it's for the benefit that you raised the other day, that's no problem. We will make sure that we get that for you. If there are other benefits that you are also referencing now, then we'd have to look at what the other ones are.
Okay, fair enough. I wanted to ask you as well about the $250 check that the government is going to be sending out this spring. And my understanding that will be counted as income and then calculated, then that would mean it would be calculated as part of the income testing for veterans programs. So is there a possibility that a veteran who receives this check could then find that they cross the income threshold for certain benefits through VAC and such as something like the diminished earning capacity, and could they then potentially lose benefits or have them lowered as a result?
Mr. Chair, I would say I've not seen any legislation around that particular payment or benefit at this time. I'd have to wait to see what the legislation looks like and how that is defined before we could make any assessment on what that would look like.
Okay, could you commit to providing us a response to that in writing then as well?
Mr. Chair, I don't have any legislation to go on to be able to look at it at this point in time. So I would have to wait until such time as there's formal legislation in place, even proposed legislation to be able to verify whether there's an impact somewhere else.
All right. Well, would you commit that when you do have that available to you, that you would provide us with a response? Okay,
certainly.
Thank you. Let me ask you about homeless veterans. We're seeing more and more homeless veterans in this country, and I know I've asked this question a number of times, and I never seem to really be able to get a full response to this question, about how many homeless veterans there are in this country. And yet when I talk to organizations across this country, whether it be veterans food banks or those who help homeless veterans across this country, for their own particular cities, they're often able to give me an exact number of how many homeless veterans there are in their communities. Yet for some reason, VAC can't seem to provide accurate numbers of homeless veterans across the country. Have you done any work on this? Or do you have a better sense of how many homeless veterans there are out there? And can you tell us if the problem is growing or not?
Thanks, Mr. Chair, for the question. What I would say to the member is the current count from a national point of view is the 2,600 homeless veterans across the country. And we work very closely with...
Sorry, before you can't carry on, there has been research out there that's been reported. For example, there was a Maclean's magazine article that reported a number that came from a study saying that there's probably well over 10,000 veterans. So why is that number so differ so much from the number that you have? You seem to have a much lower number. Are you underestimating the problem out there? Is VAC not doing its job to ensure that we're accurately there to not only find these veterans, but ensure that they're receiving the services and support that they need?
Mr. Chair, again, thanks so much for the question. And I think this is part of the work that's underway with our colleagues at Housing, Infrastructure and Community around providing supports to and identifying the homeless veterans across the country, not just one community, but across the country, coast to coast.
Sure, but can you speak? I'd like to ask you. I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's only so much time. I'd like to ask you to speak specifically. I'd like to ask the witness.
Yeah, Mr. Richards,
which is
maybe you will come back with that because we already have.
And why are the numbers so different than what you're reporting based on what
Mr. Richards? Sorry, we already have 7 minutes on this turn, so I have to go to Mr. Casey for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I want to direct my first question to Mr. Freeman. Mr. Freeman, I understand that now you are the Acting Assistant Deputy Minister, Strategic Policy Planning and Performance Branch. In taking on that role, did you continue on with some of the responsibilities that you had before taking the Acting Assistant Deputy Minister role?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. Certainly, I've appeared before committee a number of times as the Director General of Policy, and now taking on additional responsibilities around the Acting Assistant Deputy Minister, inclusive of the policy, planning, and performance roles, which would contain things like Cabinet Business Unit and affairs intergovernmentally or federal-provincial relationships.
So have you been questioned quite a bit about being a part-time assistant deputy minister?
Mr. Chair, you would be the first asking me that question.
Okay. I think this is for the finance people on the call, but maybe you want it, Mr. Harris. I know it's a straightforward question that y'all know the answer to. What is the total annual expenditures for Veterans Affairs Canada?
And Mr. Chair, we might ask Jonathan Adams to answer that question.
Mr. Adams?
Mr. Adams, microphone, please.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for the question. And so, as highlighted through the supplementary estimates B, we are seeking to increase the departmental's budget to $7.7 billion. Over 90% of that funding all is directed to veterans benefits and services. And so that would be where all of the funding and the allocation of the spending goes.
So total annual expenditure is $7.7 billion and 90% is paid out to veterans.
Correct.
Is that it? Okay, thank you. I don't know whether you've been following, but right now there is a filibuster happening in the House of Commons that has the potential to result in no supplementary estimates being approved because they won't get to a vote. If that happens, and it appears that it's entirely likely that it could happen if that's the Conservatives' choice, what will that mean to veterans?
Again, I might ask.
Okay, I'm getting some heckling on the other side, so just be. Yes, yeah, you do not have the floor. So just before we get to this, where we are in the House, so that you know, is that we are engaging in a debate where only the Conservatives are delivering speeches because they don't want it to get to a vote. So if it never gets to a vote, we have to continue talking about it. That has the potential of taking over the entire agenda so that we don't get to vote on the supplementary estimates. What impact will that have on veterans?
Mr. Adams would answer that question.
Yes, thank you. And so as highlighted, the core of the supplementary estimates is to support the significant increase we continue to receive in veterans providing applications for disability compensation and support. In addition to that, it is also veterans then seeking additional income support and rehabilitation support. And so with this, these estimates here, what we've seen is over a 15,000 increase of veterans applying for disability benefits and programs. Without these estimates are absolutely critical to providing the ongoing funding and support for veterans to access those programs for disability compensation, income support, and rehabilitation. Without the approval of these estimates, we would not be able then to support all veterans who come forward with a need for income, rehabilitation, health, or disability compensation.
Thank you. Can someone before us here today just give us an update on where we are with respect to backlogs? I know that's something that's been a major effort on the part of the department for some time now. I just wonder if you could give us an update on where that stands.
So the current figure that I have to share is as of September 30th, where those files beyond our service standard, longer than 16 weeks, are 6,246. That's a reduction of 72% since 2020.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. And what about digital solutions to streamline processes? Can you let us know where that stands? I know that was another one that you were working on that kind of went hand in hand with the backlog issue.
But just as an example, we're always looking for ways to improve benefits and services delivery, applications, processing for both our staff, but also, of course, for veterans. I'll give you an example of something like VAC Health Share that we put online just a little while ago, now a year or so. And what it allows is for certain categories of medical professionals to be able to upload and share sensitive, confidential, secure health share or health information related to applications that members, veterans may be putting in. And so that allows them to be able to get information to us in a secure way, in a quick way, and allows us to overall reduce processing times. We're always looking at opportunities to make that kind of work help, either for reducing the burden on veterans, reducing the burden on medical professionals, or ultimately on our staff so we can get to decisions more quickly.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kessy. Et maintenant, nous allons donc passer au deuxième
We will
vice-président.
now move it over to our second vice chair, and Mr. Dizile and Ms. Blaney. You will only have 6 minutes to ask questions, given the time that is currently. So please use your 6 minutes well, Mr. Dizile. Thank you very much, Chair. I wanted to thank you. Mr. Harris, I'm just trying to follow you on the backlog. 72% of a drop compared to 2022 is good, but right now the department is responsible for how much of the percentage of delays that we currently have? It's around 60%. So within 16 weeks, it's around 60%. Do you have any objectives? Are there certain procedures that you intend to put in place, that you intend to change, so that you can reduce these timelines? Well, as per the answers I just gave to another members, we're always looking for a means of facilitating applications and the process leading to a decision. However, what we are seeing is a sharp rise in the number of applications. We receive every year 10% more applications that come in. Even though we're very productive, that is a major challenge for us to meet with all of these applications.
The francophone anglophone timelines right now, could you give us some numbers? Currently, there's a gap of 0.4 by a week, so 19.5 for English requests and 19.1 for French requests. So we're not going to let you go off on that. So we're not very far from a parity in terms of requests in French and English. So I have some data here that I found really interesting. If you could provide this data, I'm not asking for it right now, but if you could provide this to the clerk to give us a clear picture within the categories of mental health, pain and suffering, support to veterans' families, to give us a picture of the benefits. What percentage of support goes there? Let's say what was the percentage last year? I want to see the progression. Now, for mental health, has there been an exponential increase? Support to veterans' family members? Can we get a small comparative study of those numbers? We will see what's possible. It's a major request to give you a clear picture for veterans, men and women alike, but we'll see what we can do. It would be interesting so that we know exactly where to invest our energy in the future. Mr. Freeman, you know that the current study with Indigenous and Black veterans has taken quite some time, and we're still working on that because the Indigenous veterans have expressed that when they are out of the major urban centers, and this is very frequent, it takes about 2 hours to find help, 2 hours to come back. And is there any provision in the current budget, an additional allowance that can allow that we can meet them where they are or bring them closer to those urban city centers? I don't know. Is there something provided for in the budget?
Mr. Chair, thank you for the question. I think I would ask Mr. Adams to chime in on any financial aspect to that. But I would say prior to the member that there are policies in place to assist veterans in traveling to medical services as part of their service-related disability conditions and the treatments that come from those. There are services available to help travel and whatnot.
Et peut-être Mme Meunier peut ajouter le travail de son équipe.
Ms. Meunier, can Ms. Meunier add the work of her team, the awareness raising activities in the community?
Sure, I'm happy to add more. And since our Indigenous veteran engagement team stood up, we've met with close to 4,000 Indigenous veterans, whether that is at larger events like powwows, annual general assemblies. We've gone into communities like Pabino First Nations in New Brunswick. So we are constantly engaging with individual veterans and communities to figure out how do we close gaps. As my colleague, Mr. Freeman, mentioned, though, that there are are programs available for veterans who have to travel a distance to access benefits and services. So we're quite pleased with the work that the engagement team is doing, and through that we're learning firsthand of the opportunities we can put in place to improve processes and programs.
Merci. Oui, petite question pour Monsieur Adam. Est-ce que
Small
vous pouvez
question for you, Mr. Adam. Can you confirm that the current budget, the one that's currently earmarked for veterans' benefits, is completely used up?
And so at this point, the requested increase through supplementary estimates B of 7.7 billion is not fully used up. This is the forecast of what we will need to support all veterans that will come forward between during the fiscal year. So there is still budget available for all veterans who do come forward.
Jonathan, do you want to answer that question? Are we
Est-ce que vous
forecasting?
voulez répondre à cette...
I'm sorry, there was an audio error. Could you repeat the question, please?
Est-ce que vous prévoyez dans ce
Do
type
you plan,
d'allocation-là
as part of this budget, a surplus for 2023?
I'm very sorry, it didn't come through.
Okay.
Yeah, we can certainly. On peut faire un suivi là-dessus.
We can follow up on that, but the easy answer is that each year we always have a slight surplus as a result of the fact that we always ask for more money than we need in order to ensure that we never have to deal with a situation where a veteran who's eligible and is supposed to benefit from a program is unable to receive their benefits. Now, when you have a surplus in your budgetary items, is this transferred to the same line item for the next year? No, it is returned. Returned to the tax center. Thank you. But of course, it's always available, and we can request it for the next fiscal year.
Now let's go to Ms. Rachel Blaney for 6 minutes, please.
Well, thank you, Chair, and I am happy to have you folks here to answer our very good questions. My first one is really about the fact that we heard in the Women's Report, and we've heard it again in the witnesses that we've had on the Indigenous and Black study, is that when things are not documented, and often forms of discrimination are not documented, then when people who serve get to VAC, it's very hard for them to get the correlation in place to have their suffering recognized and cared for. So right now we know that there is the CAF racism class action, and we know that there's a lot of people that are looking to be compensated for really horrendous racist activities that happened in the CAF. And I'm just wondering, as part of your process at VAC, is there any work being done to sort of figure out how to accommodate that reality that was not documented properly from the CAF? And so how do you deal with these complex issues where the CAF isn't documented, but it's obviously documented by the legal system, so that the services for the veterans can be appropriate?
Mr. Chair, I'd add in response to that question, something quite specific that we've done, which is we've updated the eligibility entitlement guidelines around a number of existing suites of psychiatric benefits, for an example, where it includes guidance to decision makers when they're reviewing it to understand that repeated unjust conduct or being subject to prejudicial treatment can not only cause but exacerbate mental health issues. And so that's guidance that we've added directly into the decision-making guides that our frontline staff use to be able to render decisions on, service relationships and things of that nature. So to the example that you've provided where, somebody was subject to unjust behavior, it would not necessarily be something that's documented in a service file, but it's understood based on a number of class actions, a number of reports and studies that have been completed. This guidance is now included in the documents that our staff use to help render decisions as well.
Well, thank you for that answer. And I think that also, I just want to put the connection between that response and the changes that are potentially happening with the VIP program, and encouraging that there should be a different process to address those issues. So my next question is, of course, going to be on the gold digger clause. We know that in 2019, $150 million was put aside. I've asked questions about it since then, and it's always that figuring out who to give the money to is the challenge. And I'm just wondering, have you guys gotten any further along? Are there any largely women who have been identified as gold diggers by an old policy that is something from 1901? Is any of that money actually flowing to the survivors of veterans who married at 60 or older?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for the question. And work continues on this very important file. As the minister noted in one of her appearances, very much a priority for the department to determine and really understand this group of survivors and what best would support them into the future as they go through this very difficult situation. That work continues, unfortunately, is not yet complete, and therefore nothing to, of detail at this particular moment, though that work remains a priority and remains underway within the department.
Well, it's 5 years, so I know that I've talked to a lot of women, so if you need a list, I'm happy to provide some of those folks, women who in some cases are dealing with pretty economics challenging times. And this would make such a big difference, especially after you've spent, in one example, 25 years caring for a veteran who needed a ton of care and now living in poverty as a result of that marriage. The last time I had a chat with Mr. Ledwell in this committee, I was talking about the need that I see for trauma training. And I've heard through the grapevine, so please correct me if I'm wrong, that a lot of folks that are starting to come work for VAC are coming from the corrections background. They are coming from one department to another department, which, makes a lot of sense. They have some understanding of the skill, but I wonder if they have the trauma training that they really need. I think if you're used to dealing with people from the criminal element, you might be a little bit more abrupt, and we don't want to have that happen, well, for any Canadian, quite frankly, but especially for veterans. And Mr. Ledwell said that there is work happening around the Tell Me Once policy so that veterans didn't have to repeat. But unfortunately, I'm still hearing that veterans are having to repeat their story. So I'm just wondering if you have any update on this, and if there's any actual comprehensive trauma training that's happening, and if so, how has it changed from the previous online component?
Mr. Chair, we have been working through, as was noted by the member's question, there are a number of trauma-informed training elements that are already in place for Veterans Affairs staff members, something called specifically trauma-informed training, but then lots of other elements and segments of training that involve elements of trauma-informed training as well. So that's been in place for some time, but we do recognize the need to update it and make sure that it's staying consistent with new approaches, best practices for all of our frontline staff. We're looking at the best way to do that right now, so that we can roll out that training not only to existing staff, but of course for any new staff that we're bringing on board, either from other departments or new to our department. And with respect to the Tell Us Once principle, we absolutely want to have that as the rule that's in place for veterans. We may ask them how they're feeling about something rather than to tell us about the trauma that they've actually suffered. What kinds of things can we do to help them feel better rather than having them retell their story? What is the barrier that they're facing rather than the actual incident itself? What barrier might they be facing? And how can we address that with ourselves, with mental health professionals and others who are part of the overall suite of practitioners who help support veterans as well? We want to do that from a paper point of view, from a submission point of view, from a phone call point of view, all the way through.
Thank you very much. And two more interventions. The first one from Mr. Fraser-Tolmie, so you can split your 5 minutes. Please, Mr. Tolmie.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the department for coming, and for those that are online joining us, thank you very much. We've spent a lot of time listening to some very, very heartbreaking stories. And I'm sure you watched the videos. I'm sure that you've seen or witnessed what we've seen and what we've heard. this past summer in the city of Moose Jaw, the food bank was threatened with closing down. It was threatened by closing down because there was a lack of donations, because cost of food is getting higher. It's increasing. People have less to give. The financial donations weren't going as far because the cost of food has gone up. And what we're seeing, not only in the city of Moose Jaw, but across Canada, is increased use of food bank usage. And we know that to be a lot of veterans, in fact, a lot of serving members in the military. And so, my question comes to you is, how do you track the number of veterans that are using the food bank? Or do you have something in place to track the number of veterans that are using food banks or have to rely on food banks?
Mr. Chair, we can't track individual usage by veterans of food banks across the country. What we do have in place is a series of suites of programs and services that are meant to ensure financial security for veterans as well. And so that may be compensation that they've received for illness or injury. More importantly, it may be compensation for an income replacement benefit. So if a veteran's unable to work or is undergoing a rehabilitation program, they're going to be supported at 90% of their pre-release salary. We also have a Veterans Emergency Fund that's been put in place for now about 7 years. And that fund has helped over 8,000 unique clients.
And thank you, Mr. Harris. Thank you for pointing that out. So how do veterans identify accessing that fund? How do you, because we know that you can't track how many people are using food banks. So is that not a formula or a way to be able to track the need and how much need is out there?
I think the answer to the question is one that we've talked about a little bit earlier. Mr. Freeman talked about it a little bit earlier. It's a combination of programs. It's prevention by making sure that eligible veterans come forward and are being supported through what are significant VAC programs. It's the reason why we're here asking for increase in supplementary estimates so that more money can go to veterans who've come forward and are eligible for those things. Secondly, it's, what can we do from a homelessness point of view? And Mr. Freeman spoke earlier about the initiative, and the minister spoke earlier about the initiative about putting more places in spots for veterans to prevent homelessness and to ensure that if they do end up on the streets for one reason or another, there's a place for them to come back in and reestablish themselves. And then there are things like a Veterans Emergency Fund, which we can track for shelter, food, heating, those kinds of things as well. And we have seen various increases over the number of years of people using it, and we continue to support the program.
Well, thank you, Mr. Harrison, and I thank you for your I was going to say your question, but for your answer. I mean, it's absolutely heartbreaking that veterans have to use these programs, and it's just showing the cost of living crisis that we're going through right now, and it's a cyclical event where unchecked spending is creating the problem, and you're in the middle of it. I do want to share my time with Ms. Wagenthal. She has a question.
Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome.
And thank you for being here. I appreciated hearing about the improvement in the backlog. So I want to make sure I heard correctly. 60% of applications are now being processed within that 16-week time frame. So out of the end of the 16 weeks comes some form of care. So when does that 16 weeks start? When every piece of information VAC needs is in your hands? And how, because I do hear from veterans a lot, they struggle with providing everything in a timely way. I have veterans who thought they were ready and then they say, oh no, we need a new report from your specialist. And of course that takes weeks, months. So are we counting that time from when you have every document you need to be able to process it?
I do think we need to be fair to say that an application that we get that has no information, rather than just we have to be fair about that. There's a balance to be found. And most applications come in fairly filled out, well filled out. Some are missing some information. And so the Auditor General has been quite clear about how they viewed the 16 weeks, and the 16 weeks being, you get an application, you have to get them to pay in 16 weeks. not only a decision rendered, but actually to pay. And so we've implemented that. That's the service standard that we're referring to now, is that somebody actually gets it to pay within 16 weeks.
So do you have anyone in your department that's focused on assisting with getting what isn't there for you to be able to do that in 16 weeks?
We absolutely do. And so we have staff members who reach out all the time with respect to an application that may be missing something, to go back to a veteran and ask them, there's this piece that might be missing. As you noted, it might be medical information, but it could be other things as well.
The role of that particular staff?
No, it would be one of their roles. Yes.
Thank you. Now, the last intervention before we adopt or not the supplementary B, Mr. Randip Sarai for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. As Ms. Munier, I think you weren't here to answer the question, but Mr. Desilets had raised a question about the Highway of Heroes project. Just wondering if you could add to that, and perhaps it'll answer Mr. Desilets' question as well.
Sure. I just want to assure members of the committee that we did not provide funding to that memorial that the member was discussing. While we did provide funding for Trees for Life for a specific project to plant many trees, we didn't contribute any funds to the memorial. That said, as soon as we were made aware of the issue by a veteran themselves, we contacted the organization, and we continue to work with that organization to ensure material is either taken down or addressed or revised to the adequacy of the veteran in question. So I just wanted to assure the committee that we did not contribute funds to that specific project, and that we are working with the organizers to make sure that the problems are addressed. Thank you.
And I'll continue to ask you another question,
Sure.
Ms. Munier. As part of the current study that is focusing on Black and Indigenous veterans, I imagine you followed the meetings and that we've had since the appearance by the department. Wondering if there's anything else you can add or you want to add to the conversation to help inform the work we've done and will continue to do with Black and Indigenous veterans.
Yes, absolutely. With regards to Black veterans, we're learning a lot through the program related to recognizing the No. 2 Construction Battalion. And while that's a specific effort, it certainly has brought us much closer to a number of Black communities to hear much more clearly some of the obstacles that they may face, discrimination that they may have experienced. And as my colleague, Mr. Harris, said, working within the department to ensure that our employees are very well aware of what they may have experienced in service and elsewhere in society, that we are very informed and process claims and work with individuals in the most sensitive way possible. I'd also like to flag or highlight that we talked about the Invictus Games earlier, and with regards to Indigenous veterans, we're really pleased to see the strong reconciliation connection between the Invictus Games 2025 and the Indigenous communities, the 4 host First Nations that have completely been in partnership with the organizing committee from the bid all the way to right now. And we're really excited to showcase and profile and recognize the services of Indigenous veterans and learn a little more about how we can continue to evolve our work with the AFN on the Letter of Understanding with Métis veterans and build a strength in our relationship with Inuit veterans across country. So thank you for the opportunity to share a bit more about that.
Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Adams. Veterans Affairs continues to work to reduce the backlogs, while at the same time the department continues to see a rise in interest in its applications. Could you give us a sense of the growth of applications that VAC has seen over the past few years and maybe some statistics that you have at this point for 2024?
Absolutely. Happy to provide a little bit of information on this. And so as Mr. Harris and the ministers earlier mentioned at the committee, what we've been seeing is a very consistent increase of approximately 10% growth in the number of veterans coming forward, seeking for support with disability adjudication, disability compensation for their applications. This year alone, we've seen an increase of 15,000. and we are on pace to receive 94,000 applications from veterans for disability compensation. And so these supplementary estimates is the funding that we require to support that increase in disability compensation. And then once those veterans are approved, it's supporting them with rehabilitation support and income support as well. So it's been a very steady trend of increased demand and need from veterans that we're positioned to support.
Thank you, Mr. Sarai. Et collègues, membres du comité, avant de passer au vote, j'aimerais dire aux collègues que je veux
Going on to
regrouper
the vote, I would just like to group all of the motions about the supplementary estimates that have been sent to our committee. Can I group them together by subject? Yes, you have unanimous consent? Yes, fine. So credits 1 and B under the Ministry of Veterans Affairs. Are they adopted? Yes, thank you.
On division.
Oui, d'accord. Dois-je faire rapport à la Chambre des crédits?
Should I report to the House on division?
Okay, good. And excuse me, and
I'm just trying to make Blake happy.
Ms. Blaney, to make Blake happy. Well, Ms. Blaney, on behalf of the members of the committee and myself, I'd like to congratulate one of our members, the new father, Blake Richards, and the mother of the new baby, and say welcome to your new baby. We don't know if it's a boy or a girl, but welcome. Et voilà, donc je veux remercier les témoins qui ont participé.
Thank you very much. I want to thank all of the witnesses who participated in hour 2 of the committee. We had with us Stephen Harris, Mr. Mitch Freeman, who is the Acting Assistant Deputy Minister, Strategic Policy Planning and Performance Branch. And online, we had Jonathan Adams, Chief Financial Officer, as well as Mr. Pierre Tessier, Assistant Deputy Minister, Chief of Financial and Corporate Officer Sector, as well as Ms. Amy Mounier, Assistant Deputy Minister, Commemoration and Public Affairs Branch. So, is it the pleasure of the committee to adjourn the sitting? We are adjourned. Thank you.
Yes.